Hi, everybody, and welcome back. My name's Melissa, and this year I'm sharing 365 tips for frugal living. Today's tip is check on your parents. You're probably wondering how in the world you may be thinking, well, yes, if you're a good child, you're going to check on your parents, assuming, there's a good relationship and no abuse and everything. But I'm lucky. I actually come from a big family. So there's it's not just me who checks on my parents. I have siblings who do too. I'm also lucky that um my parents are um not experiencing like a significant cognitive decline like Alzheimer's or anything. However, I am at an age where I do know quite a few people between people my parents' age who went through it as adult children and people my age who I'm seeing go through it, and frequently they're not checking on their parents, or they don't realize the decline is so steep, or they don't necessarily want to stand up to their parents. And I mean, sometimes it's tough. I watched my mother fight with her parents about taking away the keys because of safety issues and they couldn't drive. Um, and I mean, now there's all sorts of technology, but back then there wasn't as much. 15, 20 years ago. But I'm I'm not worried at current time. I'm not going to say it couldn't happen, but I'm not worried about either of my parents sending money to a Nigerian prince. However, though I don't know anybody who's sent money to a Nigerian prince, I do know people who have had um, out of country, much younger boyfriends who they have met online and have sent significant amounts of money to. I am talking six figures over to other countries to their boyfriend who is just trying to be able to come and move to America so they can spend the rest of their life together. And I don't know if these people are thinking that they're much younger than they are, because I mean, me in my mid 40s is not thinking that a 22-year-old is interested in dating me. I mean, if a 22-year-old is online and is like, "Oh, I want to spend the rest of my life with you," I'm gonna be like, "No, you don't." Besides, you can't. I will die before you. Um, but if a if that same 22-year-old is telling a person who's in their 60s, is that person like, is it or 70s, is it like a mental capacity issue? Is it like a dementia? Is it like a they're thinking they are younger, or are they, obviously something is kind of going wrong there. And that can kind of happen with age. And you don't want to see your parents taken advantage of, um, because it can happen. It can happen quickly. My grandma was an incredibly frugal woman for most of her life until the end, when she discovered QVC. And oh my God, she bought some of the ugliest stuff in triplicates, one for her, one for my mom, and one for me. Luckily, I didn't have to see most of it because my mom went in and returned it. And so I didn't have to tell my grandma, "Thank you, that is the absolute ugliest wreath I've ever seen. I don't want to put it on my door." I wouldn't have said that to her. I loved my grandma. I had one grandma who was just this weird, crazy woman who always hated me. And I had another grandma who absolutely adored me. And, we baked apple pie together. And she was just an amazing grandma. Would skip downtown with me as a child. Literally, we would skip downtown because I love to skip. Um, would sleep with me when I had nightmares. Like, she was just a great, great grandma. But she did kind of hit a point where she bought some really ugly stuff for some reason, and nobody could figure out why. Like, my grandma had some impeccable taste. I absolutely loved. She had some of the most beautiful furniture and things, and she kept them nice. And I absolutely loved so many of her style choices. But towards the end, like, maybe again it was the cognitive decline, but um she still was okay and still had enough money to, even though she was doing that, to be able to still have the care she needed and afford it, and the assisted living and all of that. However, one, pensions aren't what they used to be. Two, healthcare isn't what it used to be. And three, um you know the money's just not there. Social Security has not kept up with inflation, and that's assuming Social Security is even around another 10, 22 years, whatever, 2 months, I don't know. But it's it's tough because we want to make sure that our parents have enough money to care for themselves in their older years and their retirement. And then on top of it, over 30 states, I can't remember what it's called, but they have this law where you have to pay for your parents' medical care and medical debt. So if your parents have an incredibly expensive nursing home bill and they run out of insurance or whatever, you have to pay it. And depending again how Social Security and Medicare pan out over the next few years, um, that could really impact your retirement. I mean, I'm Gen X, so I'm never going to retire. None of us are. We did side hustles as children, and first jobs at 14, 15 years old, constantly working, and that's just us. Not always able to find a great job, but still we found a job. And we a lot of us have accepted that retirement might not be in the cards for us. We'll work ourselves to the grave. And I don't know if it's a mentality thing or just where we ended up financially. But I have accepted that there is a good chance I will work until I die. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'd like it. I mean, I saw a lot of people retire at 55, and I can't imagine retiring at 55. I mean, it just seems so young. And if I was a multimillionaire and could travel the globe, then sure, absolutely, I'd be retired right now. But alas, I am not. If any multimillionaires want to retire me and send me cash, let me know. Just hit me up in the comments below. But seriously, you know, your your parents might not have as big of a cushion as their parents did. And you don't want to then have to come up with that excess because they've sent their money to a Nigerian prince, or they've donated it all to some fraudulent I can't think of what it's called, charity, nonprofit. I I remember my dad went to a family friend's house when their spouse died because they were ready to give 100% of their inheritance and insurance money to the church because the church said that's how you're going to make sure your husband gets to heaven, is give us the inheritance, give us the insurance money. And I mean, he had just been taken from the house. It was like same day. And and they were ready to, like, they preyed on her vulnerabilities. So especially if, like, one of your parents loses their spouse or something, like major things like that too. But one, you don't want to see your parents suffer. Most of you, I feel like even most children who are estranged from their parents, most children who have chosen to go no contact, I feel like even in those experiences, most of them who have gone no contact have done so for their own safety, and they don't necessarily wish ill will on their parents. And for them, I'm not saying like check on your parents, but do check with your state and their state and make sure that if this person who was incredibly abusive to you, because most people who do go no contact from their parents, I don't know if, as a viewer, I don't know if you're familiar with the whole no contact process, but sometimes if a adult child has experienced extreme abuse throughout their childhood, they go no contact. Sometimes it's physical, emotional, sexual, whatever it is. Um, Sometimes for their own safety, they have to do that. And I don't judge them for that, but if you are in that situation where you are no contact, I'm not saying now reach out to your parents to be frugal. Then you might want to see, like, if you have a sibling who's checking in on them, or check with the laws to make sure that you're not going to be financially liable for their deaths and situation. Um, but I have known numerous people, seriously, these are people who I've known in real life, whether I've known the elderly person who has incurred the situation, the adult child who has dealt with the fallout, or both. um, it can be tough. And if you are, especially if you're single, so I am, you probably look at me, you're like, you're healthy and you're, young and no problems. I actually set it up so that my brother and my sister, so my one brother is kind of the person who is in charge of everything. If something happens, he's the coordinator. He makes sure to get whoever needs to be there and taken care of. And he also makes sure to check in financially with me as well, to make sure that he's the one who knows that I'm trying to save massive amounts of money, like a ridiculous amount of money, like a really, really ridiculous amount of money, to pull off like this absolutely harebrained scheme that may or may not work. I am talking like, this is the absolute crazy, like, I'm not always. I am frugal out of necessity frequently, and I know how to be frugal, but I dream big, like really big. if I didn't dream so big and I was just like a nose to grindstone person, I'd probably be really boring, but I'd probably be really, really well off. I have taken some chances in my life. But I don't know, I probably wouldn't be well off, but I'd probably be safer than I am now. But anyways, well, unless I did what everybody said I should do, but never mind. That's a story for a different day. But I have seen a lot of situations where, oh, I'm sorry, I was off on a tangent. So my brother's the coordinator. Anything happens to me, my kid knows to call that uncle, and that uncle knows to pick up. That uncle always picks up. And will make sure to call and wake up whoever needs to be woken up and get them there. Medically, my sister is my primary, mainly because she also has a uterus. And I feel like there are so many things that can go wrong as a woman that I don't want my brother to have to be that far behind the eight ball playing catch up in the event that there is something major and it affects that area. And he also knows that if somebody has to get to me immediately, it's got to be my sister-in-law or a specific family friend I've chosen, because I want a woman to be there when things are decided. That is very important to me. But he also knows to make sure. So in May of 2023, I went downhill quick. I was figuring out who was going to raise my kid. I was planning my inevitable demise. Nobody could figure out exactly what was going on. A lot of things were getting really bad. I was pretty non-functional for a good 6-ish months. There were days I could barely make it from my bed to the chair and back, and I live in a 400 square foot house, and that is tough. Lots of processed food because I had no energy to cook. And that's sad too, because the processed food doesn't give you the energy you need. But I was really in a bad place health wise. I have multiple disabilities that affect multiple things in my body. I have fought my way back. So I spent a year with no hope. And then May of 2024, I decided I didn't want to die. And that if the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong, I was just going to attack it one symptom at a time. And now it is April 2025, almost a year later, and I am so much better than I was 11 months ago. I mean, like, incredibly better. So I didn't necessarily need it. However, I also am aware that I do have multiple disabilities, and that though I'm very excited that they are under control right now, that doesn't necessarily mean they will be under control my whole life. So I still do have that as a backup. So regardless of what end of the spectrum you're on, whether you are the parent who needs to be checked in on, or whether you are the adult child who needs to check in on your parents, it's just a good idea, frugality wise, to make sure that because a lot of us, we don't have that spare money. I mean, do you have the money to keep your parents in a nursing home or an assisted living facility? Do you have the money and time to be able to put them into your home in a spare room and care for them? Where is your situation if they were to become destitute and that's what had to happen? And if you do spend that money, what are you giving up? What's going to happen when you hit that age? Is there going to be enough money to care for you in your 80s and 90s? And everyone's different. Oh my God. I met a woman when I first moved to Florida, so like 2013, 14. And I was like, oh wow, you are so like happy and spry and blah, 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 blah. You know, like you are really bubbly. And I thought she was like in her 50s, because I mean she definitely, she was fully gray, and you know, she did have some wrinkles and stuff. She was 92 or 93 years old, jumping around, skipping, and everything else. So we all age differently, but you never know when that cognitive decline is going to happen. And for a great deal, many of us, it will at some point happen. It may happen younger, it may happen older. You may be lucky and have it never happen at all. But even if you don't get dementia or Alzheimer's, you still are going to experience cognitive decline. I mean, everybody experiences cognitive decline. I can't remember, somewhere in the early 40s is when cognitive decline begins to technically happen. It's like your peak, you know, like you climb and climb and climb and climb and climb, and then, you know, I mean, and that doesn't mean necessarily, I mean, my kid likes to tease me that as soon as they turn 18, they're going to put me in a home. I'm like, that's not how that works. But yeah, it can happen at any age. So, well, checking in on your parents may be uncomfortable, especially in certain circumstances. And you don't necessarily need to, you know, that doesn't mean like every week you're sitting there and like going over their budget and eyeing it with them and everything. But you're keeping appraised of the situation, and you are communicating enough to know that they're not sending all their money to a, you know, Nigerian prince or a military man they met on Facebook. You know, like that stinking stock photo that if you're a girl, chances are you've had them friend. I love you, you're so beautiful, and blah 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 blah. And it really doesn't matter. I've seen them respond to people who have cartoon like thumbnails or whatever, and like, you're so beautiful. How do you even know they're so beautiful? Like, they left some random stinking comment on a post and you're like, you're so beautiful. Please send me a friend request. So weird. But today's tip for frugal living is to check on your parents, keep appraised of the situation. If you have really loved ones too, like aunts, uncles who maybe don't have kids very much so around, check on them, help them out, make sure that they're okay, because even if it doesn't impact you, you don't want someone you love and care about to suffer in their elderly years because somebody's taken advantage and scammed them, because they are somewhat more easily scammed at certain points, if you have experienced that. And I'm guessing most of my viewers are not at that stage yet, because like I said, it's a sliding scale. I mean, I could go at any time. I could come on tomorrow and have lost, you know, all of my cognitive ability. But hence the reason I have the brother that checks on me. I could have, but most often where I see it is where the parent and child isn't close, or where there's only one child and there's a huge responsibility, or that child doesn't want to have to be the one to take away the keys in a dangerous driving situation or do that. And maybe you have been that. Maybe you have been that adult child who's had to care for your parents. And like I said, I'm lucky. My I have multiple siblings, and I, we all make sure that our parents are okay. But I'm lucky that my parents aren't you know sending money to a Nigerian prince or responding to any random scam text or meeting the man of their dreams, that military man on Facebook with the stock photo. So, like I said, it's not necessarily because it's happening to me that I'm saying it. It's because I've seen it happen to other people. And if you are elderly and don't have somebody who is checking on you, try and set that up. Even if you're not, like, if you're a single person, guy, girl, and maybe you have a sibling who can check on you, somebody who can make sure that because you never know. And honestly, if anything, if 2023 taught me anything, it's that life can change in an instant, because mine did. And like I said, I was able to claw my way back, but there's just as good a chance that I wouldn't have. So definitely check on your parents. If you're single, if you don't have somebody to check on you, find somebody. And obviously, I mean, it can happen to couples too. It's just more common. I've seen single people taken advantage of in general because they don't have that like checkpoint. I mean, my mom's married. She's not interested in a military man or a Nigerian prince. My dad's married, so he's not interested in a military woman or a Nigerian princess. But so even though it's not necessarily applicable to me, it doesn't necessarily mean, and like I said, it's this huge circle, and it's just good to be checking in on loved ones, and I mean, obviously there's also like the health aspect and everything else there too, and that's a whole different story, and I'm not getting into that specifically because this is about frugality, not about, I mean, obviously, yeah, make sure they're okay, make sure they're not injured or sick, or anything too. But because it's my channel's about frugality, that's why the focus is on frugality. I'm not like a cold-hearted person who's like, I don't care if you broke your ankle. I only care about if you have, all of your money still. Obviously, I also care about health. And that's the other thing too, but that's the health is a whole different video. Anyways, again, my name's Melissa. This year I'm sharing 365 tips for frugal living. If you want to hear more, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.